CSCD 3 of the Mail Service Pharmacy Standards is essentially a replication of Pharm Core 21. In fact, specifically Pharm Core 21A and B. This is a strange standard if you don't understand the scoring. Why would you replicate Pharm Core 21A and B? Almost exactly. This standard simply requires that you have a process for making sure that your communications materials that you use with consumers and clients are accurate and don't misrepresent what you do, just like Pharm Core 21A and B. Well, the reason for this standard is in the scoring. Pharm Core 21 generally, and A and B in particular, are not mandatory elements. On the other hand, this standard is mandatory. So about the only purpose, in fact the only purpose of this standard is to make mandatory the requirements of Pharm Core 21. The documentation that you submit is largely the same. Now, what is that documentation? Well, it's in three basic categories, or three basic types. You need a policy and procedure describing requiring that you have a process in place that covers all of the elements of Pharm Core 21 and therefore deals with all of your communications materials to both consumers and clients, and make sure through an interdepartmental process that all of those materials are accurate. And not only your new materials, but your existing materials have undergone a regular review, perhaps an annual review of existing materials. So that's the first kind of documentation. The second kind of documentation that you'll need for this is examples. I wouldn't go overboard on submitting examples, just a page, one or two samples, a brochure or a screenshot of a web page, or a brochure that you provide to brokers who market your product. Don't go overboard on that, because what URAC is primarily interested is in the methodology that you have in place to make sure those materials are accurate. So the third category, and this is perhaps the most important, is evidence that you've implemented the policy and procedure to make sure that your materials are not misrepresenting your services. Now, the kinds of documents that we've typically seen demonstrating implementation of your policy and procedure have to do with, sometimes I've seen a form that has been circulated with a particular piece of marketing material indicating that this department head has approved it on such and such a date, and that department head has approved it on such and such a date. You'll need some sort of documentation for every single piece of your marketing materials that they've undergone interdepartmental review for accuracy and lack of misrepresentation. Make sure you've got this for all of your marketing and communications documents. Now, this suggests that you're going to need a list of all of your communications materials. This may be hard at first, but it's a good management approach. Make sure that you have a comprehensive list. You're going to need this for the on-site review, because the URAC reviewer is likely to say, I need to see a list of all of your communications materials, and then she'll select from that list a half a dozen maybe pieces of marketing material or communications documents. And then you'll be obliged to produce for the reviewer evidence that each and every one of those pieces of documentation has gone through an interdepartmental review, either as a new document or if it's an existing document that's been around within the last year or two, to make sure that it's accurate. So URAC's going to be looking for policy and procedure, and more importantly, evidence that you've implemented that policy and procedure for every single piece of communication that you extend to clients and consumers about your services.